100 years old, Alan Shayne's life has spanned the entirety of the modern LGBTQ rights movement. He got his start acting on Broadway during the Golden Age in the 1940s. Then he shifted behind the scenes when, as you'll hear, a famous casting director sat him down and told him that yes, he was talented, but no, he was never going to make it big. He was never going to be a star. And while maybe he didn't have that star quality himself, he definitely could spot it in others. He became a casting director and cast Barbra Streisand and Diane Keaton in early roles, Dustin Hoffman. He cast Broadway and TV and films, including All the President's Men. And from there, he eventually went on to become the president of Warner Brothers Television. What I find particularly interesting is that you're not able to put a simple framework of in the closet or out of the closet on his life. He is a longtime partner, and they'd go out to eat, they'd have dinner parties with people over, and it wasn't a secret that he was gay. But at the same time, he wasn't able to bring his partner Norman to work events or things specifically tied to his job. In fact, he almost didn't get the job at Warner Brothers because they were worried that a gay man couldn't navigate the quote, old boys network of the industry. His story is really one of navigating a century of change. So let's hear it. I'm Jeffrey Masters, and this is LGBTQ&A with Alan Shayne. His new book is called And It Only Took 100 Years. Take me back to the 1940s when you made your Broadway debut. I believe it was in a play called Janie, and you were 18?
Yeah.
Talk about what was that audition process like, and how did you end up walking onto that show, as you say?
I was desperate. I had no money and lived in a little $4 a week place, terrible, and was desperate to get work. And I would go to all the offices where the actors went, and they would say, nothing for you, nothing for you. And I read in the little paper that you could buy, that actors could buy, that they were seeing actors at a certain theater. So I went and I stood in line, and the two guys came out and they looked at the people and they picked me and they said, come in. And they said, yeah, I think he'll do. And they said, come back at 8 o'clock or whatever tonight. I thought, oh boy, that's really exciting. And I went back and I didn't know what they were doing. And they suddenly said, here's a uniform, see if it fits. And I said, well, okay. And they took me down the basement and I tried the uniform. They said, perfect, you look perfect. Okay, you get $1 a show and just be noisy. I didn't know what they were talking about. And finally, there were some other guys there also in uniform. And some man came and said, all right, guys, let's go. And I followed them, and I thought I was afraid to ask what we were going to do. I figured they're going to give me a reading now. And suddenly, we all walked on stage, and the curtain came down, and that was my job. And it was a play in which the girl had invited all the soldiers from the nearby base, and her parents, I guess, got hysterical. And suddenly all the soldiers arrived, and the curtain came down. That was my part. And I got $1 a performance, and I did that for some time.
Okay, so it was not what you were expecting.
No, they didn't ask me to read, they didn't ask me to do anything. I happened to fit the uniform, so I got the job. I mean, that was on Broadway, but I was an extra. I didn't do anything.
I mean, you went on to do other shows on Broadway and non-background roles. Today, the stereotype of Broadway is that it's very gay. Like, was that true back then?
What, that Broadway was gay?
Yeah.
No, if anything, you didn't want anyone to know you were gay, or you wouldn't get any work. You wouldn't be sent out by agents if they knew you were gay.
Was it like more hidden at all, or just like non-existent?
It was laughed at. I mean, it was made fun of. And if you were gay, they wouldn't send you out. I was having a relationship with a guy at that time. We lived together, but we used different addresses. If anybody knew that we were living together, they wouldn't send us out. They wouldn't. They looked down on gays terribly, and it was, gay. If gays were mentioned, it was done in a derogatory way. At a party, somebody would say something terrible about a gay.
Was there anywhere you could go with the man you were dating and like be affectionate with him?
Oh my God, no! Not not yours in the no. It was all done in the privacy of your room. I guess there were gay bars, but I was a kid. I didn't know that. That all happened kind of later. But when I was there, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any money.
You eventually married a woman in 1947, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
I know she was gay too, but would you have like consider that a marriage of convenience at the time?
It was a marriage of convenience. There's no question about it. She was a lesbian and I was gay. But we were having terrible problems with our families who said, why don't you get married? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And both of us were very fond of each other. She thought I was a wonderful young actor, and she was really helped me a lot, and actually was responsible for my getting the agent who got my really big Broadway part. But we finally decided that we'd never really love anybody. We didn't believe in love anymore. And we thought, oh, well, at least we'll live together and we'll be together and we'll have relationships, but we'll have each other. And I thought eventually we might even have a child, but we never did. And I liked her enormously. Finally she died and I was very moved by that, but I did care about her.
Yeah.
And I think she about me. We fought over the years, and sometimes we didn't speak and sometimes we did, but we were very close.
But back then, homosexuality was talked about as this thing that like could be like cured by a therapist. Talking to somebody that could quote unquote cure you. Was that something you ever like desired and wanted?
Of course. I had a relationship with a woman who was wonderful, and I really liked her a lot. And she was a psychologist. And I went to her psychiatrist to be cured. She said, the psychiatrist said, what is it you want from this? And I said, I want to be cured. I want to be straight. I don't think we used the word straight then, and I went to her for a couple of years. And what I got out of it was getting rid of the wife of Jacqueline, who was, by that point, had had a relationship with another woman. So there were three of us, two women and me, living in an apartment, and it was uncomfortable.
I believe you wrote it was a one-bedroom apartment.
It was kind of a one-bedroom, yes. There was a little storeroom that I lived in. It was not ideal. And through the analysis, I realized I wanted to get rid of her. So we did break up and we had an annulment. I did try in analysis to get rid of being gay because it just didn't seem like there was any future to it. Little did I know I was going to be with someone for 67 years. But at that time, it was kind of picking up people or doing, and I never went to bars or did things like that, but I did have a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
And it wasn't much of a life.
And I know during this time you were continuing to act and do Broadway, and then you shifted to casting and behind the scenes work. The impetus for this was a man named Michael Shirtliff, who was a famous casting director and also wrote the book Audition, which is considered like a Bible, I'd say, for aspiring actors.
Yes.
What did Michael Shirtliff say to you about your acting?
He called me in. I had never met him, and I had been playing opposite Lena Horne as an understudy. I understudied Ricardo Montalban, and I was feeling very
And it was in the musical Jamaica.
in Jamaica, yes. And Ricardo got sick quite a bit or whatever, and I would go on in blackface at that time because it was about natives on an island in Jamaica. Uh, and Michael Chertoff was very famous as a casting director and sent for me to the David Merrick office to meet me. And I was pretty sure that it was about a part. So I was all ready for finally to get the part of my life. And he said, "You're a wonderful actor, but you're never going to make it." And I went to pieces inside and said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I've seen your performances and you're very good. You're a very good actor, but you're never going to be a star." And I said, "Well, I just haven't had the part yet." And he said, "You won't make it." There's something about a star that it's just there. I mean, if you saw Robert Redford in a crowd, there's a light on him. I mean, there was when I cast All the President's Men. If you walked into a room crowded with people, there was a light on Robert Redford. He was a star. Anyway, Michael said he sent for me because he thought I should be a casting director. And I was horrified that I'd be taken away from my acting. He kept saying, "You'll have a long career and everybody will like you, but you'll never have a big part. And you'll end up with your cronies in a bar talking about what could have happened. Why do you want to do that when you can make a lot of money and have a career?" So I did. I left and became a casting director.
I mean, him telling you that you'll never be a star, in hindsight, like, do you think he was right?
I think he was right. I walked back home after that meeting and I thought about my life. And I'd been in New York I was then about 32, and I'd been there since I was 18. And I'd never made it. I had one wonderful part in a Broadway show and got good reviews, but it didn't lead to anything. And I realized that by then I had met Norman, and I realized Norman was a graphic artist, so he worked in the daytime and I worked at night. There was no future in that, because we wouldn't see each other. And all of these things went through my head as I thought, I don't want to end up as a guy in the unemployment line as an old actor talking about what could have been. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I've never regretted it. I really have.
With Norman, when you met him, it seemed like you had a lot of like false starts. It wasn't like totally clicking right away. What finally changed?
Norman was very smart. And it's one of the things that I think of today for young people. It's so easy to go to bed with anybody and, and enjoy it or not enjoy it or do it twice or do it 3 times or whatever. Norman, we finally did have sex badly, terrible. It was going to end. I mean, it was just not going to work. And Norman called me and came over and said, "I really think there's something between us, but we have to find out who we are and whether we really care for each other, and no sex."
So he was not scared away by you guys having bad sex.
No, he wasn't. I don't know why he wasn't. Well, I had encouraged, it was my thing. I was, what are we doing? I mean, we had dinner. What do you do after dinner? It was a time when if you lived on the east side of New York, you had only to open the door and people came rushing by. It was a very gay area at that time. And he was smart, and we spent, I don't know how many months seeing each other every night, having dinner, going to the theater. And we were together, but we never had sex until finally we did. But by then we knew that we had so much in common. Little by little, we've got to know each other and realized how we really cared for each other. And that was the basis for 67 years.
Wow.
And also that we decided to be monogamous.
I mean, can I ask you? So you spend these months getting together. not having sex, getting to know each other. Um, when you finally did have sex, how was it?
Wonderful. It was wonderful. It was loving. It was loving and wonderful. And that was it. I mean, that was it.
What year did you meet him?
58.
58. And so, as you write, a big shift happened in your relationship in 1976 when he won an Emmy for title design. Um, this shift happened because you were not present at the ceremony. It sounds like, right?
There was still homophobia. We were in Hollywood. I had a good job. I had produced the shows that Norman did the graphic work for. And then when he was chosen, I was advised not to go to the Emmy. Although we lived very openly in Hollywood and we entertained the networks and together, I didn't go with him to business dinners. Everyone knew we lived together and we lived openly. But I was advised not to go to the show, to the Emmy Award evening.
Is that because when you're, hosting people over home for dinner, that's like private in a way, but like the Emmys are public?
Yes, it was public. And if it was a business dinner, a big dinner, let's say, I don't know, a benefit or something, I would go with a woman.
Ah,
I mean, I was I think, the only person who was an executive who was gay, who was known to be gay. They were I mean, everybody knew about Barry Diller and everybody knew about, all the ones that were quiet, or David Geffen, all that stuff. But we lived openly. We lived together, and we went always to restaurants together. We were known to be together, and everybody knew Norman and liked him, but they didn't want it rubbed in their faces in a business meeting, if that makes any sense.
yeah. I mean, and you were the president of Warner Brothers
Yeah.
Studios Television at the time.
Yes.
So there's these unspoken rules where it's more or less like don't ask, don't tell. Well, actually, no, you are telling. But it's more or less like it's fine, but don't make a big deal about
Uh,
it.
I was in the film division at Warner's, and I was casting as well. And then finally, they hired me to just be in the film division. And one day they came to me and said, "We're going out of the television business, and you're the only one who has any knowledge of television." I had already produced television and for years worked with David Susskind on all sorts of plays on television. Anyway, they said, "You're the only one, and we're firing the guy who was the head of television. Would you just take over till we can get out of the business? We have to do various things. It's costing us a fortune. And it's only for a couple of months, and you just take it over." So I did. And since I took it over, I decided to do it as well as I could. And it became a success. I got series and I got miniseries and so forth. And so one day they came to me and they said, "It's a success." I said, "I know it's a success. And everybody's talking about it, and we're going to stay in the business." I said, "Wonderful." They said, "Let's find somebody to take it over." I said, "Okay." So we then began to make lists of people that would take over the television division. Nobody wanted it. I mean, they all had their good jobs. And so I suddenly thought, what the fuck are we doing here? I mean, I've made this thing successful. I mean, they were going out of business. So I went to Ted Ashley, who was the head of it, and also a friend, but the head of Warner's. And I said, "I just want to share with you, Ted, I should be the head of Warner's Television. I should be the president." And he looked at me in great amazement. He said, "Oh, we never thought of that." I said, "Well, I didn't either, but I just thought of it. And then began the homophobia. Not really strong homophobia, but the feeling, oh, he's gay and he can't really work with the old boy network that is television. They're always at the soccer game or at the ice skating rink or whatever it is. Alan won't do that. He's a gay person. And that, so weeks and weeks went by as they argued this. People would tell me things that were going on. And finally they called and said, "You're president." But that's the homophobic area that we were living in at that time. It's not that they hated gays, they just didn't think they could make money and sell.
I do want to go back, though, just a little bit in time to the 60s when you were casting for Broadway, because one of the shows you were casting director for was 1962, I Can Get It For You Wholesale, which is famously Barbra Streisand's Broadway debut.
Yes.
How did she get on your radar?
I had gone to work for Michael, and one of the first shows we worked on was I Can Get It For You Wholesale. We saw everybody, and at one point he said, well, I want you to see this girl. She's incredible. There's nothing for her, and I Can Get It For You Wholesale, but she's a treat, and her voice is incredible. And he brought her in for an audition, and she was really she looked like an anteater at that point. She wore old kind of clothes, and she came in these kind of grungy clothes and took her chewing gum out of her mouth and stuck it on the piano and then sang, and the voice was so incredible. She sang Sleeping Bee. He just went berserk, and Michael said to me, there's nothing for her in the show, but I wanted you to hear her because she's incredible. And she was. And when she sang, she was gorgeous. Then, we went through the process, and I don't know to this day who thought of it, but somebody said, well, let's make her the telephone operator. It was meant to be a woman in her 50s.
Miss Marblestein.
Yes.
But no, it's always Miss Marmalstein.
Miss Marmalstein?
You think at least Miss M they could try?
Miss Marmalstein?
Miss Marmalstein?
It's funny you talk about her looks, because when I grew up, Barbra Streisand was already Barbra Streisand, and from my young brain, she was impossibly glamorous.
The shock was what happened to her in that show. It's just suddenly she had gorgeous nails, was beautifully done. I don't know who did it, but she changed amazingly. She looked fantastic.
When you moved to Hollywood, you cast Cicely Tyson in an early role, Diane Keaton in her first film role. You did Catch-22, the film, All the President's Men with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. These are some of the biggest stars we had. Going back to what Michael Shurtleff told you about that you didn't have star quality, you didn't have that spark, it's clear you were able to identify that in other people, though. How do you define what that is, like what you're seeing?
Well, most of what I learned as a casting director was to see the performance. I couldn't tell by meeting somebody that they were gorgeous or wonderful. It didn't matter what they looked at. I was helping cast a little off-Broadway production, and they put an actor in that I didn't know, and I went to see it, and I saw Dustin Hoffman. God knows, not a beauty, but he was the performance was so spectacular. He played a kind of transvestite Berlin, I think it was Harry Noon and Night was the play, but I can't remember. But you knew from that performance that he was going to be a star. You just knew it. He didn't have the light that, Redford was different because he was that blonde hair and he was so incredible looking. But you knew he would be a movie star. You didn't know how good an actor he would be. But there was something about the performance. I knew that Faye Dunaway was going to make it. I mean, you knew because there wasn't anybody around like that. She was a leading lady. So when I put her into a play, she made a success. I just, most of what I learned as a casting director was to see the performance. And that told you, when you saw Richard Gere, you knew he was going to make it. Now, in Hollywood, it's all different. Stars, it's not the casting director. It's the star that they want. So that when I went to Hollywood and I would make suggestions of New York actors, and they'd all look at me as if I were crazy. And they'd say, what about Robert Redford? What about Paul Newman? What about, it's always stars.
They just wanted a big name.
That's what they want because it makes money,
Yeah. Did you miss casting specifically for theater, or it is about talent, like when you did move to Hollywood, when you became an executive,
I don't know. I'd done an awful lot of casting before I got to Hollywood. And I don't know, New York had changed. It was very tough at that time. And I was glad to be in Hollywood where they'd park my car and gas it and do all that stuff at the studio. And you go to the dentist and you could have, they parked your car at the dentist. I mean, it was all such a nice time.
I mean, you grew up with very little money, and then you were living in New York City, uh, I'll just call it like shitty apartments. It must have been an extraordinary like lifestyle change to suddenly be, a Warner Brothers executive.
Well, remember, I'd been very successful as a casting director. So we were living very well. The difference is in Hollywood, we lived opposite Rock Hudson. We didn't do that in Connecticut. And also I had a special table at the good restaurants. If you had a good job in Hollywood, they treated you very well.
Yeah. You mentioned Rock Hudson. This is like the 70s in Hollywood. Was there, I know you weren't, able to be like out as a gay person, but was there camaraderie with the other, gay people in Hollywood?
No, because we never really lived that life. The David Geffens and those people I knew, but we were never, we may have gone to one or two gay parties in all the years we were in Hollywood. We didn't really fit in too well. We were, a married couple, not married until, we could get married, but we lived a very married life. We were together every evening. I mean, we lived very well.
And I know you were never, an activist in your life, but like, were you paying attention to like the larger, kind of like gay rights movement that was like unfolding?
It wasn't very, it wasn't really there. I mean, we didn't, maybe if we'd gone to gay parties, we would have been more knowledgeable, but we didn't. I mean, we went to one or two and felt very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Nobody, first of all, we were the wrong age. By then we were, I forget what age we were, but we weren't kids.
Yeah.
So nobody really wanted to be with us or find us attractive. For example, when AIDS started to come along, we didn't know anything about, our friends were getting sick and we didn't understand what was going on. None of us did. We knew they were getting sick and we saw them. They came to the house looking terrible, but nobody knew what was going on at that time. I mean, Rock didn't know what was going on, I guess. He came to the house for dinner one night. He was very thin. We didn't know what was, it was all a mystery.
Yeah.
And we weren't part of a gay movement. We weren't, I'm sorry to say.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you would not have been able to have the career you had you, been out and an activist and loud about being gay.
Well, no one was loud about being gay. It was all done secretly. No one said they were gay, and the gay parties were secret. It wasn't spoken of. I mean, it just wasn't spoken of. We we went everywhere, but no one ever said out loud. I didn't say out loud I was gay until I was 50. We've been together 50 years. It wasn't mentioned.
Wow.
I mean, it was obvious, but it wasn't mentioned. What can I say? Uh,
You're, I mean, you're 100 years old now, which, um, but you've seen like you've seen the full span of the modern LGBTQ rights movement in your lifetime. Like, what are like the moments from your life that stand out, like where there was a change? You know, be it like being able to, hold Norman's hand in public, or like small things. Like do you have things that stand out?
I've never held Norman's hand in public. Um, we just weren't brought up that way. I mean, it was that we're always together. Everybody knows we're together. All our friends know we're together. Anybody, our maid knows we're. I mean, we live very openly. But I don't kiss him in public. I wouldn't do that. That's not the way we were brought up. We were
Yeah.
brought up in secrecy, and we were afraid. There's no question. We lived secretly for a long time. We didn't in Hollywood. We lived openly, but I didn't do anything in public that would embarrass anyone.
So when did you become comfortable like publicly labeling yourself as gay?
I think probably, I don't know, it just kind of, well, we got married in 2004. That was the first time you could get married. And we got married because we felt that we ought, if we believed in being gay, we ought to stand up for it. So we got married as soon as we could.
Yeah.
That was very early. We got married in Nantucket when you could get married in Massachusetts.
I mean, you're 100 years old. Norman's 95 years old. You write in the book about how many of your friends have died. It's kind of remarkable that as many people as you know who've died, like you're both still alive, together.
Well, part of it was that we lived a monogamous life. There have been one or two episodes. For the most part, I would say 99.9% of the 67 years have been monogamous. And when we have had a moment of thinking of otherwise, we've been smart enough not to go through with it. I think that's kept us together. Um, Norman has now had a broken leg and he's not been well. And we're married. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're together, but you're also just you're alive.
yeah, we're not.
At these ages, it's against the odds. I mean, if I can say that.
Well, we stopped smoking. Luckily, we did. I think that's very good. We don't drink heavily. As a matter of fact, at the moment, we don't drink at all, but we did drink a lot in our life of wine, but never were drunks. We've never done drugs. We just couldn't do it. We tried in Hollywood. Somebody always tries at a party to give you something. I hated it. I think if we had been in Hollywood and not monogamous, we'd be dead. So many of our friends were.
You're saying because of AIDS.
Because of AIDS, yes.
Yeah. Do you how much now do you think about your own death? Like how present is it?
I think about it. I don't, it doesn't frighten me. I would like to face it in a strong, brave way, and I would like it to be pleasant, if possible. And of course, we're old. We're getting problems.
Yeah.
Eye trouble, ear trouble, all the stuff that you get when you get older. It's not all jam to be 100 years old or 99. I figure it happens any day or any moment or when it happens. I mean, most of our friends are gone. And that's something else that you have to face, that they're gone. You have to have younger friends.
Well, thank you for the fantastic conversation. This was great.
Thank you. You've been very nice.
And that is Alan Shayne. His new memoir is called And It Only Took 100 Years. And then, as always, if you enjoyed this interview and want to support us, the easiest thing for you to do is to leave a comment or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening. Also, I should mention we have a Substack newsletter and would love for you to join us there. It is free and just a great way to connect and see behind the scenes moments and pictures, and also it's a place to recommend guests for future episodes. There is a link in the show notes to that, and thank you so much to everyone who has signed up and joined us there. It really does make a big difference. I'm Jeffrey Masters. I'm on Instagram at JeffMasters1. See you next time.